Hi, my name is Dylan with Halogen Systems, and today I'm going to show you how to establish communication with our sensor and troubleshoot an address not found error. So, we have one of our drinking water sensors here and a CNO4 controller. The things that I'm going to go over here are going to be applicable to both ballast water and municipal water sensors. The primary difference between ballast water and drinking water is going to be the type of cable connector. All of our municipal water sensors have this M12 connector on here, and all of our ballast water sensors will just have the 4 leads coming out of the junction box. Most of what we're going to try is going to be similar between both, and I'll kind of express the differences as we go. So the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to turn on power to our controller, and I'm going to show you some of the ways that we can use the controller to establish communication. When you first plug in the controller, in the first 30 seconds it's going to scan for all Modbus addresses, and it's only going to do that on initial startup. So if you power on the display first and then plug in your sensor, and you take longer than 30 seconds to do that, you're going to have to either power the controller back on, or you're going to have to do one of the commands that I'll show you right now to establish communication with the sensor. And you're going to notice here that we get the 4 to 20, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the still searching. This still searching will stay here for a while, disappear, and then in about 15 seconds or so, error, sensor not found. So now we can do a few things to establish communication here. The first thing that I'll show you is basically just plugging in the sensor and then how to establish communication from the display. So for a municipal water sensor, we're just going to plug our M12 here into the sensor M12. If this was a ballast water sensor, we would be wiring the 4 wires into the display board itself. I will show that here in a few minutes. When you're having communication issues, one of the things that you really want to pay attention to is whether or not the sensor is powering on. The best way to do that is to troubleshoot any communication sensors with your sensor like this, right next to you, somewhere where you can hear it. That's going to be the best way to determine whether we are getting power to our sensor. Once you have that ruled out, then you know it has to do something with our connections here or possibly a setting on the controller. So when you're troubleshooting, keep that in mind. You want to always be able to hear that your sensor is powering up. So as you can see here, the display still has not found the sensor. And to activate the long menu, you're going to hold select and right arrow for at least 2 seconds. And then we're going to go to menu, configuration, Modbus options, and we're going to go down and we're going to run a bus search. Basically, this bus search is going to do exactly what the display does on startup, and it's going to cycle through addresses 125 to 144 to establish communication with the sensor. One of the things you can do to see that you didn't establish communication at all is if this says 145, that means it went through the entire search without finding a sensor. So we're going to go ahead and hit select. It's going to initiate a bus search. You see how these top values stayed right at 125? That means it established communication at address 125 with our current Modbus and parity settings. It's going to continue to scan for additional sensors because we can communicate with multiple devices as long as they have unique slave addresses. So we've now made it all the way through, and we're going to go back to our menu here. And now you can see address 125 pops up, and now we're starting to get our measurement readings. So we have successfully established communication with our sensor. So that's the first way to establish communication with our sensor. Next, I'll show you one of the ways to do it like you would with a ballast water sensor. Say you went and did that and you still weren't able to communicate with the sensor. Then the next step is going to be to rule out some communications or hardwire connection issues. So at this point, I would disconnect my sensor, and I'm going to remove this M12 connector. The times that I'm going to do this is if this sensor is not powering on at all, then I'm going to want to pull this connector apart, make sure that everything's connected to the right terminals, that you have the right pin out. Also, these can get twisted during installation, especially if you're running your wires through conduit. So definitely one of the first things to check is your M12 connections here, as well as confirming on the display board itself And you can just use a flathead screwdriver or a key to remove the faceplate. So if doing that bus search doesn't work, then we're going to want to check our hardwire connections here, especially if our sensor's not powering on. And the places we're going to look here is to make sure that our sensor wiring pinouts are all connected and tight, and that our green or blue cable is going to RS485B, the white cable is going to RS485A, the black cable is going to ground, and the red or brown cable is going to 24 volt. Once you've confirmed that, and that is working well, one of the other things that you can do here is use a multimeter to confirm that you're actually getting 24 volts to power, and you can check your pinouts here as well. Usually don't have to go into that much depth. If you connect now after confirming this and you're still not getting communication, then you can remove your M12 connector, remove these wires, and wire the sensor directly into the display board to rule out any damage to this M12 connector here as well. So now I'm going to show you how to establish communication when you can see address none, nothing is shown. Of course, our sensor is not connected. So we're going to go ahead and connect the sensor again. We're going to confirm that we can hear the sensor powering. And then the next way that we can establish communication here with the long menu active by holding select and right arrow. We're going to navigate to the maintenance menu, scroll all the way to the bottom and select restart system. And this is going to restart the display and send a restart command to the sensor. And whenever this display restarts, it is going to reestablish communication by initiating a bus search again. So this is the second way to establish communication. And you know you have communication because address 125 has now appeared in the bottom left-hand corner, and you're starting to get your measurements again. So that's the second way to reestablish communication with the sensor without changing any wiring. So that is how to establish communication with one of our sensors using the display functions as well as power cycling the display to establish communication with our sensor. Thank you for watching, and if you have any questions, reach out to us at tech@halogensys.com.